What is going on, fam? It's Jaye Black here. Another video. Salute to everybody that's tuning in. I want to talk about Paul George. I wasn't sure whether I was going to address this, but since Paul George is going to the Clippers, I found this whole situation sort of to be like a full circle moment. And it has to do a lot with Paul George, who dated Doc Rivers' daughter a couple of years back, before he got with the Skripper girlfriend, baby mama that he's on and off with now. Okay? Now, according to this article from Fadeaway World, it says back in 2014, Paul George dated Doc Rivers' daughter and allegedly cheated on her with a stripper. Okay? The Los Angeles Clippers set the world on fire when they landed both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George early morning on Saturday. Now that a deal is completed for George, we get to see how stories from the past resurface to haunt the forward and his new coach, Doc Rivers. Things are going to be a little uncomfortable between them. Back in 2014, PG-13, yes, that is a nickname, was dating Callie Rivers, Doc Rivers' daughter. Why is this a big deal? Well, during his days in Indiana, George allegedly cheated on Callie and offered to pay a stripper $1 million to abort the child, fruit of his deception. Ultimately, the stripper, Daniela Rajic, decided to follow through with the pregnancy according to, 1B Times, IB Times? Did you really think that she's going to abort a baby that she could not only will she be able to get money from as far as child support, she can also be tied to him? You see, if she would have gotten pregnant by some guy that was, a bit bummy, of course she's not going to carry that baby to full term. But because, she was going to be conceiving from him, of course she was going to keep it. There's no way in the world that she was going to get rid of this child. And what a curious world we live in, that today George has 2 children with Rajic, while Rivers is engaged to Seth Curry, who faced PG in the first round of the playoffs last season. And these are tweets from Brody Logan. It says Paul George's ex is Doc Rivers' daughter, who he allegedly cheated on with a Miami stripper. Now Doc, his coach, the NBA is wild. Doc traded away his own son, then traded for the guy that knocked up a stripper while dating his daughter. Doc Rivers doesn't care about anything but winning. You're exactly right. These NBA coaches only care about winning. You are very much so right about that. Doc Rivers is no different. And as far as trading away his son, listen, people got on Doc Rivers for trading for his son, for having his son on his team. Austin Rivers actually is good energy off the bench, but anyway. But at the end of the day, Doc Rivers wants to be employed by the Clippers. He wants to continue to be a head coach in the NBA. And yes, he is willing to have the dude who messed around on his daughter on his team. But again, I feel like maybe him and Paul have talked about this. They've hashed it out. There's no issues there. No, they've both moved on. She's moved on. In public she has, seems like, right? And he's doing him. And maybe Paul George is at a different point in his life than he was then, because he was the guy in Indiana. He might have been a little bit more immature, but after being traded to the OKC and having the injuries that he's had, and now being, home, as he's basically saying, I think he has a different perspective now than he did before. Although Paul and his camp denied all of this back in the day, you have to admit that things won't be so smooth when the player and his new coach meet in LA. So obviously they haven't met yet. Of course, they are in the league trying to win championships, and that's their common goal. So they probably won't be too worried about it. Still, nobody doubts that At the beginning, this is going to be and feel awkward. Yes, because his family is going to be at the games, even though Callie Rivers may be at Seth Curry's games and not necessarily her father's. But the feeling is still going to be there when they have family get-togethers, you know. And let's say they do go to, let's say the Clippers go to the Western Conference Finals, right, or go deep in the playoffs, right. The family's going to be there supporting them, especially let's say if Seth Curry isn't in the playoffs, she's going to be at those games cheering them on. She's going to be there after the games, and that is going to be awkward. But honestly, I honestly feel like Paul George doesn't really care, if I could just say it like that. I don't think he cares. I really don't. You know, this guy knocked up a stripper twice and is now dating her. You know, even though he continued to do his own thing outside of that situation, he's still with her. Now, I want people to understand something when it comes to a lot of these NBA guys. For the most part, it seems to me that there's a lot of behind the scenes conversations going on. You know, maybe it was a situation where maybe him and Callie have squared things, or maybe they're good now. And I also will say this though, I think that at first Doc Rivers didn't want Paul George on the team, but when he thought about the fact that Kawhi Leonard was only gonna sign if they brought Paul George along, I think Doc had to get out of his feelings. You know, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I could be in this situation. Winning is winning, but unless me and Paul George have had an understanding, me and let's say my daughter had an understanding, I can understand it. But what it seems to me is that Doc Rivers cares more about winning a championship than than you know his daughter's feelings. But like I said, it's up to him. If him and like I said, if him they've already talked, and you know, again, this article is a couple days old, okay. But maybe they've already talked since then. I believe they probably already have talked since then. I don't think there's any lingering issues. And again, I've said it. Paul George has probably grown up, and he's not the same type of dude. He cares about winning. Then you could say, hey, we shake hands and we can get to work. You know, because I would hope that he's made, you know, things right on his end, and Callie has made things right on her end. So there won't be no awkwardness. She understands that her father wants to win, and they wanted Kawhi Leonard, and you know, they want to make peace with the situation they had back in 2014. She's with somebody, he's still with this Skripper, and that's just how things are right now. That's just how things are right now. You know, you shouldn't stay mad at somebody forever. And we still don't know exactly what her issue was in the relationship. You know, maybe the relationship wasn't even that serious. And again, when you're dating an NBA player, because she hasn't learned her lesson. So obviously, if the relationship with Paul George was so bad, she wouldn't have went and got engaged to another basketball player. You know, she wouldn't have gotten into another relationship with another basketball player. It could have been a situation where they were just casually dating, you know, and they've since moved on. I'm telling you right now, though, women love their basketball players. She ain't the only one out there that chase behind these guys. So really, I think that if Paul George has the growth that I believe he has, he's going to be able to focus on basketball. Doc Rivers is going to be able to focus on basketball, and it really shouldn't be that big of a deal if he traded for him. But again, at the end of the day, the Clippers are desperate to get out of the Lakers shadow. They're desperate to get out of the Golden State Warriors shadow, because all three of those teams are in the same state. Okay? And the Clippers want to have their own group of bandwagon fans, like the Golden State Warriors. You know, the biggest bandwagon fan base in sports. You know, out of nowhere, they got all these fans. But winning does that, you know, and the Clippers want that. You know, they want their games to have that big game feel, like a Lakers primetime game, or, you know, a Golden State Warriors primetime game, you know. And they really wanted Kawhi, and if they had to go and get Paul George, the same guy who stepped out allegedly on his daughter, in order to make that happen, Doc Rivers was ready to make that happen. So